Il Presidente.
Buongiorno. Ma la... Grazie. Prendiamo posto, buongiorno.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. Let's take our seats now.
Devono andarsene? Sì. Direi di iniziare, prendiamo.
I think that we can now begin. I would like to say hello to the public in the public gallery. Good day to all of you. Today is an important day, as you all know. On our agenda, we have the presentation of the College of Commissioners and their programme by the Commission President-elect. So we pass the floor over to Madam Ursula von der Leyen for the introduction to the debate. You have the floor, President.
The 27th of November, and exactly 30 years ago, the clock strikes 12, church bells ring, sirens blare, workers down tools, factories, mines and shops empty as the streets fill up with dance and hope. The historic 2-hour general strike in the middle of the Velvet Revolution saw people from Prague to Bratislava take part in a beautiful, peaceful wave of freedom, courage and unity. For me, these 2 hours go to the heart of what the European Union has always meant. It is not only about parties and politics, rules or regulations, markets or currencies. It is ultimately, and above all else, about people and their aspirations. It is about people standing together for their liberty, for their values, simply for a better future. There is one quote from the great Václav Havel, one of the heroes of 1989, that stands out for me when I look ahead to the future. He said, "Work for something because it is good, not just because it stands a chance to succeed." I chose this quote because over the next 5 years, our union will embark together on a transformation which will touch every part of our society and of our economy. And we will do it because it is the right thing to do, not because it will be easy. We sometimes forget that our greatest achievements have always come when we are bold. We were bold when we sought peace where there was pain. We were bold when we created a single market and a single currency. We were bold when we welcomed part of our European family that had been out in the cold for too long. But in the last years, we had to focus on the here and now, managing crisis after emergency, fighting to keep our unity and solidarity intact. If we have emerged stronger in that time, and I believe we have, it is in great part thanks to the leadership and conviction of my predecessor, Jean-Claude Juncker, a great European. He has devoted his heart, his soul and his life to our union, and his legacy speaks for himself. Jean-Claude, merci.
From all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the European Parliament, 4 months ago, you placed your trust in me. Since then, I have been meeting all of the political groups and all of the heads of state and government. Together we put together an exceptional European team. You, the members of the Parliament, put each of us through hearings. I promised you that I would listen to you, and that is exactly what I've done, and I will continue to do so, together with Maros Šefčovič and all of the other members of the college. We've often been in agreement, and yes, of course, sometimes we have disagreed, but that is democracy at work. Today, here, in the heart of this European democracy, I am asking for your support for a new start for Europe.
Honourable members, the team you are voting on today come from different cultures, countries, and have different backgrounds and political colours. We have teachers and farmers, mayors and ministers, doctors and diplomats, engineers and entrepreneurs. We have those born before the Berlin Wall was built and those born after it was torn down. Those who lived in dictatorship and those who helped young democracies join our union. It is a team with almost as many women as men, only one woman away from gender balance. This shows we have made real progress, but also that we still have to do more. As the first woman to be president of the Commission, every member of my college will have a gender-balanced cabinet for the very first time. And by the end of our mandate, we will have gender equality at all levels of management for the very first time, and this will change the face of the Commission. Every member of my team will bring their own personal stories and perspectives on Europe. They will have their own policies and priorities to manage, but all together we will be one team that works in the common European interest. We will be one team that works with this House and with Member States to tackle our generation's defining challenges. We are ready, but most importantly, Europe is ready. My message is simple. Let's get to work. Honourable members, this is an unsettled world, where too many powers only speak the language of confrontation and unilateralism. But it is also a world where millions of people are taking to the streets to protest against corruption or to demand democratic change. The world needs our leadership more than ever to give the world a power. We demonstrate and And we also share the same destiny with our transatlantic partners. Yes, we have issues, without any doubt. But our ties have lasted the test of time. While we are speaking, thousands of students, researchers, entrepreneurs, artists continue to build zillions of friendships, business contacts and science projects. These myriad of fine threads woven together make a bond that is stronger than any individual point of discord. Countries from the east to west, from south to north, need Europe to be a true partner. We can be the shapers of a better global order. This is Europe's vocation, and it's what European citizens want. And I'm happy to have such an experienced diplomat as Josep Borrell on our team, working alongside with Jutta Urpilainen, Olivier Varhelyi and Janez Lenarčič. They will do an invaluable job together. We will invest in alliances and coalitions to advance our values. We will promote and protect Europe's interest through open and fair trade. We'll strengthen our partners through cooperation, because strong partners make Europe strong too. My Commission will not be afraid to speak the language of confidence, but it will be our way, the European way. This is the geopolitical Commission that I have in mind and that Europe urgently needs. Honourable members, if there's one area the world needs our leadership, it is on protecting our climate. This is an existential issue for Europe and for the world. How can it not be existential when 85% of people in extreme poverty live in the 20 countries most vulnerable to climate change? How can it not be existential when we see Venice underwater, Portugal's forests on fire, Lithuania's harvests cut by half because of droughts? This has happened before without any question, but never with that frequency and with that intensity. And we do not have a moment to waste anymore on fighting climate change. The faster Europe moves, the greater the advantage will be for our citizens, our competitiveness and our prosperity. The European Green Deal is a must for the health of our planet and our people and for our economy. Frans Timmermans is the right person to make this happen. And I'm delighted that he will be supported by Kadri Simpson, Adina Valean and many others. The European Green Deal is our new growth strategy. It will help us cut emissions while creating jobs. At the core of it will be an industrial strategy that enables our business, big and small, to innovate and to develop new technologies while creating new markets. We will be global standard setters. This is our competitive advantage, and it's the best way to ensure a level playing field. But all of this has to serve the European people. They want and expect Europe to act on climate and environment. But they also need affordable, clean and secure energy. They need to be skilled to work on the jobs of tomorrow. They need to commute to these new jobs or to be connected from home. And we have to make sure that those needs are fulfilled in a sustainable way. It is a generational transition towards climate neutrality by mid-century. But this transition must be just and inclusive, or it will not happen at all. It will need massive investment in innovation, research, infrastructure, housing and the training of people. It will require public and private investments at the European and at national levels. And once again, Europe is already leading the way. The European Union will mainstream climate financing throughout its budget, but also throughout capital markets and the entire investment chain. In regions that will have to make a bigger step than most, we will support people and businesses with a targeted just transition mechanism. It will cut across different funds and instruments and attract private investment we need. To help us achieve this, The European Investment Bank will be a trusted partner. I'm particularly happy that the progress it has made to strengthen its role as European Climate Bank is obvious. This will boost investment in European technologies and solutions the world is looking for. But there is more to do. We only account for approximately 9% of the global emissions. We have to bring the world with us. And this is already happening from China to Canada, through to California. Others are working with us on their own emission trading system. And Phil Hogan will ensure that our future trade agreements include a chapter on sustainable development, because we know climate change is about all of us. We have the duty to act and the power to lead. Meine Damen und
Ladies and gentlemen, digitalization makes things possible that just a generation ago were unthinkable. Communicating with each other worldwide, access to information, progress in medicine, protecting the environment, mobility and inclusion. There is no future without digitalization. Margareta Vestager is the one who will be bringing us further along this route. We will automatize tasks that are difficult for us human beings, for example, carrying heavy weights or repetitive tasks, whether we're in factories or sitting at a desk. And that has a good side. It will give us time for doing the things that are specific to human beings and computers cannot do. That's empathy and creativity. Care robots, for example, can help make beds. Digitalization can help with administrative tasks, but always with the same objective. The idea is that care staff should get time to do what's really important, which is talking to patients and being there for them. Digitalization will make it possible for us to be more effective and more efficient in our use of resources, because we'll be able to control various aspects with precision: water consumption, energy, the valuable resources of our planet. Yes, digitalization will transform our society, our economy and our administration, and is doing so already. If we are to seize the huge opportunities and also address the risks, we have to get the right balance and do so where the market does not manage to do so. We have to protect our European prosperity, but also our values. We have to take our own European path, even in the digital age. Well, what do we want to do in practice? Yes, we have to manage key technologies and keep them in Europe. To do that, we've got to think about quantum computing, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and critical chip technologies. If we're going to be able to do that, to close the gaps that are out there at the moment, we have to work on our strengths. Let's bundle our resources, let's bring together our money, our research capacity, our knowledge, then implement them in practice. That's what we did back in the age of the supercomputer. Back then, Europe is one of the, or rather, right now, Europe is acquiring one of the most powerful computers in the world. The next generation of supercomputers has to be built by us. Europe has got all the scientists and industrial capacity to be competitive in these fields. Let's not talk ourselves down. We should not be talked down by others or talk ourselves down. Innovation needs clever minds, but it also requires diversity. It needs freedom to think. We have all of that here in Europe. People want to live here. They want to research here. They want to create their future here. We need future-ready infrastructure with common standards, including gigabit networks and secure clouds for the current and future generations. The raw material for digitalization is data. Every click that we make here in Europe, we feed algorithms, many of them transatlantic algorithms, that then influence our behavior. That's not a good state of affairs. As we did with the GDPR, we set the framework for the world. And we can do that now for artificial intelligence too. Because we here in Europe put people in the centre, not the market and money, but people. What we're not talking about here is staunching the flow of data. No, what's at stake here is that we should be setting the rules as how to deal responsibly with data. For us as Europeans, protection of the digital identity has to be a top priority. It's important to us. But at the same time, we want innovations. Today, 85% of all non-personal related data, 85% is not used even once. It's collected automatically, but it's not used even once. That is wasteful. In this data, knowledge is slumbering. It is here in Europe and we have to use it. We have to set out the framework for governments and companies to share data and make it available in a secure pool. I can't think of any more competent person than Thierry BRETON for developing a data strategy. But then we've got cyber security. Cyber security goes inseparably with digitalization. That also has to be a priority for us. For the competitiveness of Europe's companies, we need to have the highest security standards, and we need to have a unified European approach. We need to share knowledge of risks, not need to know, but need to share. We should create a common platform and an expanded cybersecurity agency. That's the only way we'll be able to build trust in a networked economy and raise our resilience against all kinds of risks. We can succeed in doing that if we proceed together, if we build upon our European values. In that case, I am confident that Europe can play a leading role in the digital age. Europe can do it.
Honourable members, Europe has a lot to be proud of. We are the world's trading superpower. We rank first globally in exporting manufactured goods and services. We are the largest source and destination of foreign direct investment anywhere in the world. Our industry is world-class in high-value sectors, for instance, making a third of the world's space satellites. And our companies are at the cutting edge, holding 40% of the world's renewable technology patents. We should harness this transformation power of the twin digital and climate transition to strengthen our own industrial base and our innovation potential. This can only be done through investment. And honourable members, we have to scale up. For years, we invest less in innovation than our competitors do. This is a huge handicap to our competitiveness and our ability to lead this transformation. This is why we should not see the next multi-annual financial framework as a simple accounting exercise. The world 7 years ago looks nothing like the world in 7 years' time. Our budget must be significantly modernised. I know that in this field I can not only rely on the experience and skill of Johannes Hahn, but also on this Parliament. But public budgets can only go so far. We must make sure that investment can flow to where it is needed by completing the Capital Markets Union. This will help improve access to finance for small businesses and startups, to let them grow, innovate, and take the risks they need. And the same goes for the banking union. We have to complete it in order to make our financial system stronger and more resilient. I have entrusted this task to Valdis Dombrovskis, the right person for the right job. He will make sure our economy works for people. Quality jobs, equal opportunities, fair working conditions and inclusion. He knows that we need sound public finances for sustainable growth. And he will drive our competitiveness and our sustainability. They go hand in hand. We should never forget that competitive sustainability has always been at the heart of our social market economy. We just called it differently. Think of the family-owned business all across our European Union. They were not built on solely shareholder values or the next bonuses. They were built to last, to pass down generations, to provide a fair living for the employees. They were built on passion for quality, tradition and innovation. The things we make today may have changed, but we must rediscover our competitive sustainability, dear friends here in this high house. It was in this spirit that each and every member state committed to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And it is in this spirit that Paolo Gentiloni will oversee the implementation of the goals. He believes in it, and I believe in him. The European economy has recovered from one of the worst economic and financial crises since the end of the Second World War. The labour market remains strong, and unemployment continues to fall. However, with clouds forming on the horizon, Europe should prepare for what is ahead. We need to rely on what makes us strong, our single market, our single currency. It is high time to complete our economic and monetary union, to deliver growth and jobs by increasing macroeconomic resilience. We must use the flexibility allowed under the Stability and Growth Pact to give the time and the space for our economies to grow. And at the same time, we must support member states with targeted investments and structural reforms. I cannot think of a better person to lead this work than Elisa Ferreira. Honourable members, last month, 39 people lost their lives in the back of a lorry after having been trafficked through at least 4 European countries. It is a tragedy that a mother in Vietnam receives a message from her daughter in Europe that she does not have room to breathe. for those 39 people, for their mothers, fathers and friends. We all agree that this should never, ever happen. People expect Europe to find a common solution to the shared challenge of migration. This is an issue that has divided us, but we should step forward. We need solutions that work for all. This is the task that I have entrusted to Margaritis Skinas and Ylva Johansson. With their different skills and perspectives, they will form a formidable team. Honourable members, one thing is for sure. Europe will always provide shelter to those who are in need of international protection. And it is in our interest that those who stay are integrated in our society. But we also have to ensure that those who have no right to stay return home. We have to break the cruel business model of smugglers. We must reform our asylum system, never forgetting our values of solidarity and responsibility. We need to strengthen our external borders to allow us to return to a fully functioning Schengen. We need to invest in our partnerships in countries of origin to improve conditions and create opportunities. It will not be easy. But let us remember the words of Václav Havel. It is the good thing to do. Migration will not go away, it will stay with us. And therefore, I think a Europe that is so proud of its values and so proud of its rule of law has to be able to come up with an answer that is both humane and effective. We should be able to do that. And that the same team of Margaritis Skinas and Ylva Johansson will also be responsible for strengthening our internal security. They will ensure that law enforcement cooperation can deal with new and emerging threats, and they will make sure that Europol, our best tool to fight crime, is fit for purpose. Honourable members, when I was a girl living in Brussels, my little sister died of cancer at the age of 11. I remember the utter helplessness of my parents, but also of the medical staff who looked after her with such care. Every one of us has a similar story or knows someone who has. The number of cancer cases are rising, but we are getting better at diagnosis and treatment. Europe will take the lead in the fight against cancer. Early next year, Stella Kyriakides will launch an ambitious cancer plan. She's the right person to make sure that Europe's Beating Cancer Plan helps to reduce the suffering caused by this disease. The point is that Europe needs to care for the things people care about. People care about the future of our children and our society. Culture and education are what link our history with our future. This is what makes us unique. Our soul, our culture, our diversity, our heritage. And I know that with Mariya Gabriel, it is in safe hands. This is why I'm happy to announce that her portfolio will be renamed Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education and Youth. People care about fairness and equality in every sense of the word. This is why I chose Nicola Schmidt to be in charge of implementing our European Pillar of Social Rights and fighting poverty from childhood onwards. He will put forward a framework to ensure that every worker in our union has a fair minimum wage. And Helena Dalli will be the champion we need to break through the glass ceilings, those barriers holding people back because of who they are, what they believe and who they love. These barriers have to disappear, period. People care about their rights, values and freedoms. The rule of law is our foundation, can never be compromised. We must ensure that it is respected and upheld everywhere, with every country treated equally. We must focus on dialogue and prevention, but never hesitate to take all necessary measures. We need experience and engagement, and Vera Jourova and Dieter Reinders are the right people exactly for that. People care about the air they breathe, the water they drink, the food they eat, and the nature they cherish. We can all be happy that Virginijus Sinkevičius will be leading Europe's fight to preserve our biodiversity and oceans while ensuring our coastal and fishing communities can thrive. And we have Janusz Wojciechowski, who will ensure that our farmers can also thrive as they adapt to new realities. The twin transitions, climate and digitalization, will bring changes for all. But let us there be no doubt, farming will remain a valued part of our culture and our future. We need a sustainable farm-to-fork strategy, from capital access to young farmers to the fact that imported food products from third countries must comply with the European Union's environmental standards. And people care about having a say in their future. The turnout in this year's European election was the highest in a quarter of a century. But democratic participation does not stop on election day. We will mobilise Europe's best energies from all parts of our union, from all institutions, from all walks of life, to engage in the Conference on the Future of Europe. It should be inclusive for all institutions and citizens, and the European Parliament should have a leading role. From the Commission side, Dubravka Šuica, an experienced member of this House, will work closely with you to make this a success. Honourable members, we all know that one member of our family intends to leave our union. A vast majority of this House seems to be happy about the fact that a very, very, very small group in this House would not be able to clap as loud anymore. and I've never ever made any secret about the fact that I will always be a Remainer. We will respect the decision taken by the British people. We will work closely together to find solutions to common challenges, especially on security matters. But one thing has to be absolutely clear. Whatever the future holds, the bond and the friendship between our people are unbreakable. Mesdames et messieurs les parlementaires.
Ladies and gentlemen, parliamentarians, in 30 years' time, other people will be here looking back on what we did, just as I did at the start of my speech. But what will they say? That depends upon what we do together. If we do our job well, Europe in 2050 will be the first continent in the world to be carbon neutral. It will be a top power in the digital sector. It will remain the economy that best manages to get the balance between the market and the social side. It will be a front runner in resolving the major global challenges. It's a difficult path we have ahead of us. The task is not easy, but together we can do it. Let's draw inspiration from this optimistic spirit of 30 years ago, the spirit that brought down the Iron Curtain. Coming back to Václav Havel, there are millions of Europeans who get involved because it's the right thing to do. There are people who are working to reinforce their communities. There are people who are giving time to look after elderly people or cleaning parks. There are people who go out onto the streets, but there are others who are changing their lifestyles to protect the climate. People who want to make a difference. We too, the Parliament, the Council and the Commission, we have to make the difference. And that's the spirit in which I put my team together. It's in that spirit that I stand here before you, asking you for your trust. Let's get down to work, so that in 30 years' time we can say, Vive l'Europe, es lebe Europa, long live Europe.
Très bien. Très bien, très bien.
Thank you, President von der Leyen. I too would like to extend my greetings to the Council and all the Commissioners present here today. We will now go on to hear the various political groups. Manfred Weber has the floor.
Clear priorities, well-balanced, forward-looking. That was a speech we hear today from Ursula von der Leyen. I thank you for this. The last weeks were prime time for us as European Parliament. We checked all the candidates proposed by the Member States, whether they are ready for the job. Not everybody was ready for the job, but finally we have now commissioners in front of us who the responsible committee gave the green light. The EPP was always insisting during the whole period in a transparent and fair procedure. The Ursula, the last weeks and months were challenging for you, but you finally were very successful. You worked hard and presented us today your new college, the team for the leadership for Europe. Together we delivered, and today, hopefully with the full support of this House, we can also give the new Commission a strong democratic legitimacy. One of the key achievements of your team is the better gender balance, the improvement of gender balance. We have more female commissioners than ever before. And I'm proud to say, as an EPP responsible politician, that from the EPP part of the college, we have 50% women. So we achieved our goal to get a 50% balance. Others still have to work on this. And we brought as EPP the first female Commission President in office. So for us, it's not only about Sunday speeches. For us, we deliver when it is about gender balance. And we have a good mixture from experienced colleagues like Johannes, Hahn, like Phil Hogan, Valdis, Dombrovskis and Mariya, Gabriel. We have new commissioners like Stella Kyriakidis, Margarita Shinas and Oliver Verhely. And we have two colleagues who served over years in the European Parliament, Adina Valian and Dubravka Suica. So from our team as EPP, we have a good mixture and we count on their contribution. Dear colleagues, my group, the European People's Party, got in the last elections 40 million votes. And we have now the responsibility to deliver what our people, our voters ask us to do. As biggest parties in Europe, in the European Parliament, in the group, we want to deliver now. In 2024, we will have implemented an ambitious and smart climate policy based on innovation, without attacking farmers and without doing politics against the industry. In 2024, we will have achieved that the European Union will have a master plan against cancer. We will have achieved in 2024 to build up 5 million new jobs, and we have to stop brain drain between East and West. In 2024, we will have agreed on further trade agreements. When Trump is building up trade walls, we as Europeans have to build up trade bridges. And in 2024, we will have transformed Europol in a full European FBI, where the mafia and the organised crime is really under pressure. In 2024, we will have defined the final borders of Europe. Turkey is a strong partner, but Turkey cannot become a member of the European Union. And in 2024, we will have established a strong European border and coast guard with at least 10,000 Frontex officers to protect our borders. The state decides who is arriving in Europe and not the smugglers decide. That is what we have in mind when we speak about delivering. That's why the European People's Party will today vote in favour of the Commission. Let's start now to deliver our promises. Ambitious projects are important, no doubt about this. But in the upcoming years, there is even more at stake. We feel our societies are falling apart. Our European common feeling is more and more under attack because of the split between people who feel threatened by globalisation and those who enjoy their new opportunities. What makes Europe unique is at stake. A feeling of common belonging is needed so much. Identity is needed so much. All of us know how to describe our national identity, our history, our achievements, our culture. But we as Europeans, can we describe our way of living, our European way of life? Even in the poorest countries in Europe, we have a health system based on solidarity. In the US, they are still discussing Obamacare. We have all over Europe death penalty forbidden. That's not the case on global level. Democracy, rule of law, equal treatment of men and women. And as the headline for the European way of life, 30 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, freedom, freedom of speech, of religion, of press. I'm fascinated by the Chinese culture, but I don't want to live the Chinese way of life. And the Americans will always be Europe's closest partner, but I don't want to live the American way of life. I prefer the European way of life. We will always protect, promote and guarantee the European way of life. I like being a European. In the next 5 years, we'll decide whether Europe keeps its heart and soul or if it will be pushed aside in a more and more brutal world. The EPP is ready to work together with all democratic groups in this House for a better Europe. We as EPP have proven in the tradition of the Gasperi of Adenauer, Schumann and Helmut Kohl, that we fight for a united Europe. The people count on us. Let's start now to deliver.
Grazie, Presidente Weber.
Thank you, President Weber. And now, Garcia Perez has the floor.
Señora von der Leyen.
Thank you, President von der Leyen. We gave you our trust in July, even though you weren't our candidate, but it was because you said that you and your work programme would include priorities that are key to us. You accepted to make the environmental transition a key plank of your work and of the next legislature, and you said you would do that in a just way, leaving no one behind. We want to begin work as soon as possible, but we need security that you will not let us down. Before the hearings began, the Socialists agreed that we needed to focus on environmental sustainability, economic and social sustainability. These had to be turned into concrete measures which would change and improve the lives of our citizens. That's why we're all here. That's what we've been elected for. In order to guarantee that all commissioners are competent, my group acted with responsibility and was demanding throughout the hearings of the 27 future commissioners who will form your college. This time around, we can't fail. We cannot fail the young people who are demonstrating every Friday about the future of the planet, which is at stake. We cannot let down women. That's why, thanks to our pressure, we've got the most gender-based balanced commission in history. We will continue to fight for gender equality, not just in the number of positions, but also when it comes to the policies that are carried out. One of these policies ought to be to try to end the scourge of gender-based violence by coming up with a directive. We also cannot fail all of the citizens who are concerned about exodus of their areas because of a lack of opportunities. That's why we want a Just Transition Fund, which is also ambitious and which has additional resources to ensure that the environmental transition is also a social one, leaving no one behind. We have 5 years ahead of us to demonstrate that policymakers can come up with solutions, that standing together is a strength, and that Europe has a lot to say in this turbulent world. We're not going to listen to the doomsayers, the naysayers, who want to go back to the nationalisation of policies. We know that only by working together can we deal with these major challenges. That's why we need a strong commission, a commission that is courageous. We need a commission that is able of coming up with new energy, moving on from old policies. Because there are new challenges, we need new ways of policy making in these complicated times. We must also stick to our principles in order to ensure the sustainability of our social model and to ensure the social coherence of our policies. These are the objectives, and we must also comply with the sustainable development objectives. That's why we're glad that each commissioner and the college as a whole is responsible for the implementation of the SDGs, and these SDGs have also been included in the European semester. We're also satisfied that the new Green Deal is going to be a priority of the future Commission. We know that Franz Timmermans will do an excellent job. We cannot wait to react to climate change. For us, the Socialists want a green deal, but one that is red inside as well. The EU needs to get its social soul back and must fight against social inequality, and that must be at the heart of policies. We need concrete, specific policies. Last time around, we laid the foundations of the European Pillar of Social Rights, which needs to be concluded. We, as the S&D, have an array of proposals to beef up the European Pillar of Social Rights and the Union's monetary and financial architecture, and we will continue to fight for this over the next 5 years. Respect for human dignity, solidarity and justice must also guide us in our external policy. which could not be in better hands. Josep Borrell will be charged with the mammoth task of defending our values and interests, peace, rules-based systems, multilateralism in these testing times. We must also be demanding when it comes to dealing with trade policy and migratory policy. If we don't do that, we will lose our legitimacy if we don't show consistency and coherence. We must also be ambitious when it comes to the next budget. We can't do more with less resources. New projects need more money. That's why we as a group will be very demanding when it comes to the next multi-annual financial framework. By way of conclusion, we as the S&D do not think that the fight for greater democracy is lost. We must strengthen the Spitzencandidate, the lead candidate process, and work on transnational lists. That's why we will be contributing fully to the Conference on the Future of Europe. The European Union is constructed on a daily basis, and that's why it's so exciting. Let's remember what Henry Spack said. Scientific experiments go on until you get success. Our experiment for a united Europe, a prosperous Europe, a just Europe, and an equalitarian Europe must be like that. But during this legislation, success will depend on the continuity of the European project. Citizens must return to trust and confidence in the European institutions. We as the S&D are very clear. We want to meet expectations. That's why today we will support you, but we will be demanding in this College of Commissioners. Be aware of this and act with responsibility. Let's not play around. Thank you.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cholas, you have the floor.
Madame la Présidente,
President-elect, dear colleagues, this Commission is a fruit of a very thorough exam which Parliament had it endure, but which will make it stronger. Now it will have to deliver and honour the commitments presented by Ursula von der Leyen here. Could I ask this Commission to show us three things: a vision, passion and ambition? This is the only way to prepare Europe to be able to face the challenges of this world. It's the only way to instill enthusiasm in European citizens. We need that in order to achieve our projects. What we now need to do is to ensure that in-depth changes take place. We have 4 priorities. First of all, we want Europe to be the first carbon-neutral continent by 2050, but we want to do that with a continent which will be prepared, ready to meet that challenge. Entrepreneurs, farmers, researchers will all have to be involved. We must invest in transition with the Just Transition Fund and a climate bank and a budget which will be able to cater for these needs. Then we have the digital sector. The digital sector is already changing, transforming our society with incredible opportunities for the citizens and our economy, but there are risks inherent in this too. And therefore, let us build leader companies in this sector and let's help access to finance for our SMEs with the appropriate regulatory framework for artificial intelligence, with a true European strategy with regard to data. I'm sure that Margareta Vestager and Thierry BRETON will be able to do this. And then thirdly, Europe in 5 years' time, will we still be on an equal footing with China and the US? Will Europe's voice still be heard in Africa? We have to show that we are able to manage an asylum and migration policy which is in keeping with our values, and that we're able to build a trade policy including the appropriate sustainability clauses. And we must also ensure a true defence, Europe with defence, but open to partnerships as well. We have to reconnect Europe with our citizens. We want a European democracy which will not be whittled down to elections every 5 years, but where everybody feels part of the process. And that is exactly the task of the Conference on the Future of Europe. My group will be one of the driving forces behind this. This is the way that we can do away with the institutional barriers which is preventing Europe from working properly. The whole too little, too late syndrome has to be done away with, because otherwise the Americans or the Chinese will be deciding about our future and not our Commissioner Skinner's.
Keller.
Thank you. Madam Keller, you have the floor.
Dear Commissioner candidates, you are running today for leading the European Union, a union that started out as a project of peace, of democracy, of human rights, a fantastic project. Where right now, if we look around us, thousands of people are drowning at our borders. More than 5 women get killed by their partners every day. And a union where some of the member states are turning away from these basic values of democracy, of rule of law, and of freedom that so many of the European citizens have fought so hard for. A union that risks to fail in the face of the climate crisis and thereby risking the livelihood of the younger generation and future generations. But it's also a union with a great potential to be the front runner for climate protection, to be the place of innovation and for visionaries, the continent that would stand up for its values and for human rights, be it at home or be it in the world. So today the question is, will the new Commission, will you be ready to fulfill those potentials? Will you be able to meet the challenges of the environmental, social and democratic crisis that we do have in Europe right now? And this will take courage. It will take conviction. And during the hearings, we've heard conviction in some of you, but not in all of you and not in all topics. How, for example, is the Commission going to deliver an ambitious climate protection programme if there is no will to change the agricultural and the trade policy? I can tell you that this is not going to work. Green headlines are just not enough. We need an ambitious content. We need an ambitious agenda. And without a deep reform of the agricultural policy and of the trade agenda, any climate policy must remain half-hearted, and we just don't have the time for that. And let me point out some other problems as well. It is an unprecedented situation that the boss of one of the biggest IT companies in Europe will be a commissioner for the internal market, including the digital economy, and thus overseeing the area his former company is one of the biggest players in. And we acknowledge and we appreciate even the steps that Mr. Breton has committed himself to undertaking in order to minimise the conflict of interest. But we do think that the conflict of interest here is inherent in his portfolio, and he didn't have a voice over that. But we do think that this is a big, big problem and that the digital market should have been removed from his portfolio. And as Greens, we cannot accept this sort of conflict of interest, which risks our reputation as EU institutions. Another big problem lies, unfortunately, with our Commissioner from Hungary, sent to us with best regards from Mr. Orban. And how can somebody who represents a government that is constantly undermining and breaking EU law and values, how can someone like that be telling countries that want to join the European Union that they absolutely have to follow rule of law and European laws? That is cynical. I believe that hardly anything embodies the European spirit as much as our integration policy. The idea that countries are willing and eager to join the European Union, to join our common union built on peace, democracy and freedom, that is the flame burning for us in Europe. And what are we telling those countries that are right now willing to change their policies, even their name? We're telling them that they're not important, that their voice doesn't matter, that their aspirations don't matter. I think we have done enough mistakes in that area recently. Let's not add another. President von der Leyen, we have raised those issues continuously. This is nothing new to you, but it's really for those reasons that we cannot support your Commission. But we are willing to work with the Commission in order to strengthen European democracy and human rights in order to tackle the climate crisis and to foster European integration. Whenever you and your college will take initiatives in that regard, we are more than eager to cooperate with you, to work together with you. You will find in us a constructive partner. But rest assured that we will also be critical. If you don't, you can count on that. And colleagues, it is time for us to act. The climate cannot wait. Social inequality cannot wait to be resolved. And we hope that this Commission will surprise us in many positive ways, and we're willing to give you a head start in that as well. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Grazie.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the ID Group, Mr. Bardella.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, President. Madam von der Leyen. Well, in the European election campaign, the right and left gave an illusion of being in disagreement about European policies. But here you've got a commission that simply is continuity from the preceding one. A game of musical chairs that we've seen over the last few weeks. I mean, it didn't have any effect. I think that these people will fit in perfectly within the secret procedures that Brussels is so good at. We need policies that defend peoples and nations. That would have changed things significantly, rather than the obsolete policies that you insist on pursuing. Unfair competition, posted workers, liberalisation of our public services, the mirage of federal Europe, and of course the migration crisis. You have stuck us in an infernal machine that is technocratic and soulless. Well, promoting the European way of life, that was the pressure of the socialists that changed it from protecting the European way of life. Well, what it is really is the Commissioner for promoting immigration. I'm convinced that this Commissioner will be excellent at doing his job, which is to try and smother the freedoms and the continuity of Europe's historic nations. We need to put the treaty on the table, move towards a Europe of the nations that's fairer. Basically, this is a game of musical chairs to try and keep everything exactly the same as it is.
Fitto, prego.
Mr. Fitto.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Our position today starts with one fact, which is the debate which we just listened to, and the many points proclaimed during this debate. However, there is one point of departure which is ignored, or sometimes even emphasised, the work done by the Juncker Commission. Well, this is the first point of contention where we would express our negative views, because the Commission over the past 5 years, its political action was so slow in finding solutions that when it found a solution, sometimes the problems had, in the meanwhile, changed completely. So we have to think also about the political issues which are behind all of this. Now, the alternate phases. Now, a document presented by France and Germany is going back to the old system, the approach adopted by the Juncker Commission, the very approach which led to these negative results. And then we have the second issue, which is equally important, the differences which were typical of the political clashes over the past few months, including between France and Germany, and on issues which were of considerable importance. Because having a critical approach to NATO isn't just a minor issue. We want a clear position to be adopted on this, President. And then we have another question. The programme of the President of the Commission is a programme which is looking towards the future, which wishes to solve many of the major issues which face us. But we've got to be realistic. How? This Just Transition Fund, how is that going to work? What about emissions? How are we going to reduce them? Let's not just think in terms of environmentalist extremism. Let's think about certain facts. 9% of global emissions is produced in Europe. More than 40% is produced by the US and China. So what should our industrial policy be? What should our objective be in terms of employment and the decisions which have to be taken here? And then we have the MFF. We want to do everything, the Green Deal, agricultural policy, cohesion policy. How are we going to do all of this? How are we going to tackle the issue of the budget? What are the replies going to be there? And then, as far as the budget is concerned, once again, we might drift away and suddenly penalise certain countries as opposed to others, as was done in the past with Article 7. We need to find a solution for those countries where this procedure was applied, because in those countries, the voters opposed the action of the European Commission, which was supported by this Parliament. We need clarity on these issues. And I would also like to deal with the question of immigration. Now, you referred to the very dramatic event, that tragic event of those 39 people who died in a lorry. Of course, there's a lot of food for thought there. But 67 people died on the 21st of November in the Mediterranean. 1,000 have died this year. What is our policy? Are we going to provide more resources in our budget, allocate more resources to support our border police? Or are we going to come up with a proper strategy which will be able to deal with the issue and tackle the issue by dealing with the places of departure of these people, not where they arrive? These are the questions which we're really interested in. Our group has a different position. Our approach is going to be a realistic approach, even if we have a divergent position. And we'll go through point by point everything which was said, and we will contribute to the debate, and hopefully we will improve what is done. And our positions, obviously, will be a position of opposition as well.
President.
Thank you. Mr. Schirdewan, please.
Thank you, President, Mrs. von der Leyen. We have a problem. Today and in previous months, you've promised everything. Investment of up to $1 trillion in a Green New Deal. At the same time, you talk about massive investment to digitally transform society and economy. But you haven't pointed out the contradictions. How are you going to implement your political plan if you continue to stick to false cuts and austerity? Mrs. von der Leyen, your political programme will fail if you don't end austerity policy and if you don't allow the states to finally invest. Mrs. von der Leyen, another Europe is possible. There are views on Europe differ. You don't have freedom by having armament. No, you have it through disarmament. You have you don't have European social justice by deregulating. No, you do that by having European standards which protect you in the workplace and which hold up your dignity. Environmental protection. You don't need pretty promises. Instead, you need an ambitious policy to limit global warming to 1.5% and to cut CO2 emissions by 70% by 2030. The tax avoidance of big companies isn't ended by following the rules of the OECD. It's done by coming up with clear taxation rules and by ending tax havens. You protect human dignity, not by cutting off our external borders, but by having a civilian search and rescue mission facility. Now we in the left, in the GUE, want to be a creative, determined opposition to you. I promise you that over the next 5 years, day in, day out, we will look at your policies. We will try to steer it for the European citizens so that we can take a different path for Europe. Thank you.
Non iscritti.
Thank you very much. for the non-attached members, Mrs. Begin. Yes, thank you very much, President, Commissioner, colleagues, President-elect. Europe needs a government now. We've already wasted too much time. Our citizens are asking for answers, and they cannot wait any more. Not all of your team is fully convincing. During the hearings, we saw that there were huge conflicts of interests. Too many ifs and buts. But we expect yeses from your Commission. Yes to relocation of migrants. Yes to reforming the Stability and Growth Pact. Yes to green investment. Yes to a made-in rule that would protect our companies. Thanks to these priorities, you, in June, received the Parliament's trust. But now our citizens are expecting firm and concrete decisions. There are millions of workers who risk losing their jobs because of the overproduction of steel. Well, what are we going to do? We should be using the Just Transition Fund for steel as well as for other carbon-heavy industries. We should exclude from the Stability and Growth Pact the investment expenditure. We also need to look at the merits of every initiative. We are not giving you a blank check.
Grazie, onorevole Caspary. Prego, un minuto.
Mr. Caspary for 1 minute 30.
Sehr geehrte Frau Kommissionspräsidentin.
Commission President, in July, you were convincing. You came up with a convincing programme. It was a balanced programme. I wish you all the best. Today, sitting here, 30 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, we see that in some member states of the EU there is still corruption that is thriving. The rule of law is in danger. Journalists must fear for their lives, and some have even lost their lives. I'm glad that you have said that we must leave no stone unturned to ensure that in the EU and outside the EU there is rule of law, freedom and peace. I really wish you all the best in that undertaking. Then there is the issue of security, which has been touched on. For years, we have depended on the USA to provide security for us. Unfortunately, that is no longer the case so much. We will have to ensure a good situation in our neighbourhood, and we must ensure that there aren't civil wars which lead to thousands of people fleeing. We must shoulder our responsibility, and you've made that a focus, and I should support you there. Another issue is climate change. I'm grateful to you. We do need a Green Deal. You've also said that we can't have this focus only on green. People are worried in the associations, the unions and in the factories. Farmers are worried as well. They're worried about how they're going to produce food. Then you've said we've got to do everything sustainably. We need to look at all of sustainability. We mustn't scare people. We must be able to say with confidence to the citizens, we've got a clear plan for the future. So I'm grateful to you, but I would also like to have an open, confident Commission and European Union over the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. For 1.5 minutes, Madam Bonafè.
Grazie, Presidente. Thank you, President. President von der Leyen, Commissioners, with the vote today, a new period has been opened. Now, the commitments which you have presented, President, which we support, will have to materialize tomorrow in measures which will improve the quality of life for our citizens. I promise that we'll be very loyal, but very demanding in checking that you deliver. We won't relent. In fact, we'll raise the bar. Now, citizens have shown that they still believe in the European project, but we've come to the last phase. We must not let them down here. So here, Europe is going to be built or we will die, to paraphrase an Italian who spoke in similar terms of Italy. Could I just emphasize 3 words: sustainability, inclusiveness, and social justice. We must be determined to ensure social inclusion in an environmentally sustainable way. This is the only way that we're going to be able to relaunch the economy, create good quality jobs and protect the planet without leaving anybody out. This is why a new economic governance approach will be necessary, which will be growth-driven, but which will include sustainability and the social dimension as of the European semester. And to do all of that, we need the adequate framework. If we don't have the proper resources, we simply will end up with some good intentions. The S&D Group will be able to do its bit. We'll be prepared to work on each and every provision, showing to all the citizens day by day that Europe is the best guarantee for all of our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Monsieur Journet, for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, we've already had a chance to speak on a number of occasions. You got a majority here in this hemicycle a few months ago. We've had hearings with you and all of the commissioners. You have gone around all of the different political groups. I think that we were able to deal with most of the big subjects. So I won't give you any follow-up questions, but maybe a comment. Like everyone here, we know that we're at a key moment for the European Union. I'm among those in the room who fear that this hemicycle may not be able to last over time, but we need to fight, rather, to ensure that we defend our European model. But our commissioners have emerged from a democratic process which is creating European politicians. These are not administrators. Rather, we need to have a coordination of public policies. We need an embodiment of our political policies. We need to talk to the media and to our citizens so that citizens see their hopes fulfilled that they placed in us in the European elections. We need to focus on our priorities. And I'll repeat what I said the first time round when you first came to this Parliament, when we voted on you before. I really do not understand the position of the Green Party group. We have a commission here that is more progressive, greener than any commission we've ever had before. I mean, Mrs. Keller will maybe to tell us a little bit more about her arguments, but thank you very much for engaging in debate with us. Thank you for the priorities you've restated. Thank you.
Colleagues, before I give the floor to our next speaker, could I just say that I am trying to be flexible on time, but there are already, I think, 12 requests for Catch the Eye, and I would like to get as many in as possible, so please stick to your time. I'm not saying this because you have the floor now, Mr. Smith, for 1 minute, but I would like you to lead by example. Thank you.
I always try to make my words few and meaningful, Madam President. Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here. And Dr Valdis and the Scottish National Party, we will support your Commission this morning. We believe the domestic context with Brexit has coloured our thinking. Colleagues, I have to say frankly to you that the world looks different when you face the prospect of your country being removed against your democratic will from this family of nations. You look at the big picture, not the minutiae. But, Dr von der Leyen, we do need a new dynamism in Europe. For too long it's been too easy to present the European Commission as stale, out of touch, uncaring. I truly do hope that you do, and your new college do, bring a new energy to the European Union. And President, in my last speech in this House, I'm a candidate for the Westminster election within the UK for Stirling constituency. Scotland's problems are not coming from this place, they're coming from Westminster. And if I win, I must leave this place. Remember this. You are a blessed generation. Cherish Europe. It is an amazing achievement. With all its faults, never forget what an amazing project you are part of. It's not perfect, but never take it for granted. Learn from our experience. Reversal is also possible. And if Scotland is taken out of our European Union against our will, we'll be back, and we count on you. Thank you.
And now for 1 minute, Mr. Bocchia.
Quante sfide attendono la nuova Commissione?
Well, the new European Commission has many challenges which awaits it. But of course there's responsibility involved as well. President von der Leyen, you said you wanted to increase by 30% your budget for foreign policy, but just our hiking budgets isn't sufficient to be able to bridge the differences between the various states. But do we really need a European office on the Fiji Islands or in Barbados? And then with regard to the climate, we want to be the climate champions. But if third countries don't do their bit, this will just mean more burdens for European citizens. And let's hope that we don't see programs and plans which will be used by the Commission to decide whether or not a democratically elected government is doing the right thing. How can a commission be an inclusive commission if you refused an exchange of views with millions of citizens who asked for a debate? Good luck. You're definitely going to need it.
Mr. Zila, for 1 minute.
Prezidents kundze, jums izdevās sabalansēt ļoti grūto uzdevumu.
Thank you very much, President. You found a good balance in a very difficult situation. The posts within the Commission have been well distributed, and it was a difficult task. But you're going to need the support of members of the ECR group, and you'll be able to do that in the future if the environmental policies do not undermine our competitiveness.
And it's the same as said by the very important country president recently in some interview. But if the navigation of the geopolitical commission is in the same direction, it's caused some troubles. If we are going to erode our transatlantic cooperation and instead to create new links with aggressive country in the east, which occupied some other European country only because they decided to go west, I think it's created dangerous the geopolitical development of your commission. Please be careful in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute, Ms. Hazekamp.
Thank you, President. Now, the interests of multinationals run counter to the interests of people, animals and nature. And you can see that with the energy transition. And you see the problem with GMOs and agriculture and the contamination of agriculture. So it's really important that the European commissioners be independent. Now, how is it possible that people who have financial interests in multinationals such as Monsanto or whatever, how are they involved? European policy must not be put in their hands. And then we have the Commissioner for the Climate, Mr. Timmermans. He does not accept the fact that something has to be done to the cattle industry, although it is quite clear that something must be done here in order to protect the environment. So the ambitions of the commissioners are not sufficient to really solve the problem of biodiversity and the climate crisis. This is why we don't have a lot of trust in this commission. Thank you.
For 1 minute, Mr. Sinčić.
Hvala vam. Gospođo von der Leyen, ovdje ste danas nahvalili svoju komisiju, ljude koji su vaši komisari, povjerenici za razna područja. Međutim, čovjek bi stekao dojam da tražite izvrsnost u svim područjima. Pa se pita...
You're responsible for many areas. You want to strive for excellence. But I, from a Croatian point of view, want to ask you a question. Why has Croatia been given this portfolio? Because the Croatian establishment has lost 1 million citizens from its country since we acceded to the European Union. That is a catastrophe, that loss of those people. One in every 4 of our students is leaving. So therefore I think it makes little sense. This person obviously knows very little about demographic change, but this person is put in charge of demography within the European Commission. Maybe you see things differently, but I mean, this is a prize that you've given to the Croatian establishment for having lost so many of our citizens? Well, if we continue along this route in Croatia, then we'll just have politicians left and retired people. And then if Austria opens up its doors, then more people will move from Croatia. How will the country survive?
Szanowna Pani Przewodnicząca.
Madam President, on behalf of the Polish delegation in the EPE, but also the majority of the Polish society that is pro-democratic and pro-European, we are waiting with great hopes for effective work of the European Commission and the team you have presented to us. It is true that the citizens are worried about the quality of life in Europe. That is why climate policy and environmental protection is so key, but also health protection. That is why I have found with great satisfaction among your priorities the necessity to effectively fight cancer. This is the greatest killer. We need prevention and education. In order to implement economic tasks, we need a good budget. We would like it to be bigger, not smaller. We would like to have new jobs. We would like to be able to focus on innovation and the development of the economy and education. There is another fundamental issue you have mentioned repeatedly. It is the European Commission that is the guardian of the treaties. The defense of freedom, values and rule of law is a fundamental element of our community. Nobody can place themselves above the law. All governments are equal, so please be consistent in your activities so that our community is not endangered and not undermined by anyone. Thank you very much, and we wish you luck.
For 1.5 minutes, Mr. Stanishev.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam President-elect, Commissioners-to-be. Today, you will receive a much broader and consolidated support from the Socialist Group than you did in July. And there are 3 reasons for this to happen. First, Madam President, you took strong pledges and made serious commitments, political commitments for a progressive change of the European Union, a change which is social, environmental and economic. The most progressive, actually, political agenda for the Commission is at the table, and we have to back it. But we socialists shall be very vigilant and demanding on what you deliver. And the first test will be the MFF, because you cannot make policies without resources. Second, we have a strong team of socialist commissioners who have vision, competence and energy to deliver. And the Commission cannot be seen anymore as the domain of the EPP, where one party dominates the policies. It's a balance of policies and political forces. Third, last but not least, European citizens have no patience anymore. They want to deliver. In the last European elections, there was a record participation, but the patience of the citizens is at the limits. So please start acting and delivering from today. You only have 5 years. Thank you.
For 1.5 minutes, Madam Vaughan.
Ms von der Leyen, Commissioner designate, it took a while to get here and it involved compromises for many, but the time has come for Europe to get on with its work and start producing legislation that benefits the lives of all Europeans. Ms von der Leyen, I admire your ambition to create a gender-balanced team. You fell slightly short at the last minute, but there has never been such high female representation in Europe's top jobs. Thank you for your determination to make this happen. And I now look forward to seeing similar balance in all of Europe's institutions, on its boards and at its top tables. And we must also work hard to ensure higher minority representation across all our European institutions too. Of course, I am very disappointed that there is no British Commissioner sitting with you today. Yet again, our infantile government has damaged the credibility and reputation of our nation. But let me assure you that the last remaining sane Brits are working on fixing that little problem, and we welcome your support.
In our meeting, before we supported you as Commission President, you told us that you would consult with British pro-Europeans on language and Brexit policy, and I look forward to us meeting on that shortly. I believe there are serious challenges facing Europe today, but also many reasons for optimism. You have rightly prioritised the climate emergency, digitalisation and migration. I look forward to seeing file after file come before this House for our scrutiny, policies that will leave Europe in a better position than it is now. Ms von der Leyen, it is my deepest wish that I will still be sitting in this House in 5 years' time to see the results of the work you are embarking on today. As Alan said, this is an ambitious and brilliant project, and you should all value it greatly.
For 1 minute, I give the floor to Madame Delbos Corfield.
Cette démocratie européenne.
European democracy is still young and fragile. It's not completely mature, nor is it federalist. The member states name the commissioners. That allows two governments to send loyal workers. These are Poland and Hungary, but Article 7 has been invoked against them because of a violation of values. Hungary is supposed to represent our European values in accession countries. This is a provocation of this Commission. This Commission has committed to the rule of law and fundamental rights. Will you really be able to act in the face of member state pressure and the strong intergovernmental process? Will you serve the European citizens and European values rather than being the underling of the member states? We have looked at conflict of interest. We have looked at the independence of commissioners. It's up to you to be courageous. You have maintained a portfolio called Democracy and Demography, which I find a scary title as a feminist. Then we also have the commissioner who is in charge of the future of Europe. During the Commission hearing, this commissioner refused to talk about this idea of the grand remplacement, the change. Thank you very much for listening.
Madam, there is a blue card request. Madam Delbos, there is a blue card request from Mr. Botosh. Will you accept? Did you say no or yes? Yes.
No, which part?
No. Sorry, I'm confused. Would you take the blue card? You don't have to. It's no. I think
yes.
you get.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Botosh, you have the floor. Okay, let's move on. Let's just scrap that idea and move on. Okay. Thank you for the laughter, it helps. For 1 minute, Mr. Krah.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, we've taken good note that this commission is actually following a left-wing liberal agenda, and that's astounding, given the national electoral results that make it clear that the electorate is going in a more conservative direction. So climate policy has got to be your focus, but according to the surveys, people don't really care about that so much as they care about migration, the security of their jobs and their future in their home countries. So we feel that this Commission certainly will be pursuing what the majority in this House think is right, but that's not the same as what Europe's citizens or Europe's nations want. So we will keep a close eye on what you're doing. We don't want high priests of some left-wing liberal religion, but we are afraid that the Commission might end up being just that.
Mr. Eppink, for 1 minute.
Mevrouw de voorzitter.
President, the Green Deal is the great experiment to be launched by this European Commission. By 2050, Europe should be climate neutral. But what's that going to cost? Now, so far, after 2 hours of debate, I haven't heard how much it's going to cost. I've studied the Commission documents as if they were a Bible, and there I see a figure of 575 billion euros to be spent per annum in order to reach that goal. And then in a 20-year period, if this is going to lead to 11,500 billion, that's 3 times the German GNP. Now, I'm sure that you know what a budget is, Madam President. But my question is very simple. Who's going to pay for this? I can't hear anything. But perhaps I could reveal a secret. It's the citizen. The citizen is going to be paying the bill in terms of higher energy bills and higher tax bills. And in the Netherlands, I can see that throughout the country, you've got all sorts of people who are protesting in all sorts of sectors because they simply cannot pay these bills. So that's what you can expect, Madam President.
Mr. Eppink, there is a blue card request. We're going to try this again from Mr. Koukkalas. Will you accept?
Ja, okay. Wie stelt?
You have the floor, 30 seconds.
Mr. Epping, you referred to the cost of the Green New Deal by 2050. Recent research, scientific evidence shows that the cost of climate inaction by 2050 will be to the trillions. Do you have any idea what it will cost us not to go forward with the Green Deal?
Dank u wel. Het beste zou...
Thank you. Well, the best thing would be to change this Green Deal. I think that we need to hang on to nuclear energy. It's one of the important environment-friendly energy sources we have. I know that many people in this House do not agree with this, but this is important. We also need to hang on to our gas. Now, gas is, the Netherlands is doing away with it, their gas at the moment, but gas is an environment-friendly fuel. And then there's the question of biomass. Now, biomass is not as green as the Greens are saying because it's actually worse than coal.
And now for 1 minute, Mr. Arvanitis.
Madam Chair, your presence was excellent. You promised everything to everyone, not to everyone, to specific interests, to specific political views. You talk about militarization of Europe, about the environment. We have a completely opposite opinion about you. You did not talk about workers' rights, about corruption. You didn't convince us about migration. You insist on the title we cannot accept, protection or promotion of the European way of life. You didn't listen any political group except your party. As Mr. Weber said, the EPP has a president in the European Commission. It's not like that. You need to put together various parts, and you cannot manage that. So we go to the other level, the political confrontation. I wish you courage.
And now for 1 minute, Mr. Gianjoshi.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Dear Ms von der Leyen, after a difficult, protracted task of putting up or setting up a commission, and the negative message of ditching the Spitzenkandidat system for electing the president of the Commission, we should be happy and congratulate you for putting together a team of commissioners, a college, and lining them up behind a very ambitious programme indeed. But to be successful at the end of your term, I think there must be 2 conditions that must be fulfilled. First of all, I think you have to regain the confidence of the European citizens by strengthening the European institutions, including the European Parliament, and I think it would be a good start to investigate some of the suggestions that Mr. Weber has put forward in his op-ed in Politico yesterday. The second is policy and actions. The social pillar must be strengthened, not only the minimum wage, but wage differences has to be eliminated across Europe. Climate change and the rule of law has to be acted upon. And I think you have to provide answers to these questions to counter the often legitimate arguments and criticisms of Eurosceptics and populists. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you. Colleagues, I just want to make an announcement. We have 15 people requesting Catch the Eye, and in fairness to those who might want to be added to the list, I think we have to close the list now because some will be disappointed. Now for 1.5 minutes, I give the floor to Mr. Mureşan.
Thank you very much, Madam President. President von der Leyen, welcome back to the European Parliament and all the best for the vote today. Dear colleagues, we are all united by the task to deliver the best policy for the people of Europe. We may disagree on the details, but this is the task which we all in this House, together with the European Commission, have. And one of the key tools at our disposal to deliver is the budget of the European Union for the next 7 years. And President von der Leyen, let me tell you what the European Parliament expects in this area. We have all seen the people of Europe come out and vote. Students, farmers, SMEs, people expecting more on security, expecting us to deliver more on tackling climate change. And we have to be honest with the people of Europe. We cannot do more with much less. If we agree that Europe should do more, this needs to be reflected in the budget of the European Union, and the position of the Parliament is clear. Fresh priorities require fresh funding. Please join us, President von der Leyen, in convincing the Council, the Member States, to put their money where the statements are. This is my first point. My second point, which areas should we invest in? We should strike a balance between old priorities and new priorities. Cohesion, agriculture, just because they have been our priorities for decades doesn't mean that they are outdated. We need to continue to invest there, but of course we need to invest in digital, climate and so on. And my last word on timing. The budget is important, but it has become urgent as well. Let us work together to achieve in December, in the European Council, a common understanding on what we expect from Europe and what we expect from the budget. Let's not start with small discussions on figures, because those would be divisive. Firstly, a political agreement on what we expect, and then to put the money where our statements, where our expectations are. Thank you very much. We're ready to work with you on this.
Madam Dalli, for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad that this morning we are speaking with a European Commission that committed to put as its priority the European Green Deal. But the European Green Deal should not remain a headline. It should become a reality that makes a positive difference in our citizens' lives wherever they live, no matter how big or small their member state is. Embarking on a serious decarbonisation programme that keeps at its core the transformation of our industries will only strengthen our competitiveness. And the European Green Deal should go beyond targets and revolutionise the way we do business and our industries. It should revolutionise the way we act, how we help our current workers acquire new skills, and how to educate our kids for the industries of the future. We have industries and businesses that are realising that transformation needs to happen, and they are looking at our institutions for clear commitment. And for the Socialists and Democrats, the Green New Deal is an opportunity to ensure a new economic model that puts employees and the most vulnerable at the centre of our policies. It is an opportunity to enhance our relationships with neighbouring continents, such as Africa, for example, to foster partnerships in providing cleaner and renewable energy. And it is our opportunity to protect the social well-being of all our citizens. We are ready to work with the European Commission, and we look forward to being partners in this transformation, to concretely show to our citizens wherever they are that the EU project is very much alive and working. Thank you.
For 1.5 minutes, Mr. Asmani.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The EU faces huge challenges in the coming years. Some of them are threats, but others are opportunities. We cannot stand still or choose not to act on these challenges. We need to renew Europe. The record high turnout during the European elections already 6 months ago shows us that our citizens have placed their confidence in us, in all of us. In return, they expect us to deliver concrete results. That is why the European Commission needs to start its work as soon as possible, so that we can start delivering on our promise for a strong European Union that works for our people. The task ahead is not a small one. We need to tackle climate change, ensure a stable economy, be innovative, the digital agenda, but also protecting the rule of law, gain control on migration, and provide safety and security in an unstable world, where we cannot always rely on our old allies. And therefore, I urge the new European Commission to start and to work together with Renew Europe to deliver the results that we need for a prosperous European new future. Madam President, together with your team, and I am proud to see you with the composition of that team, I hope we can start together to work on a Renew Europe. Thank you very much.
Mr. Eickhout for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, and Madam President-elect, thank you very much for your priorities. They sound like the right ones, and we are willing to work with you on those priorities. But it is also clear that we have our concerns, and they have been elaborated before by Ska Keller. It's on the rule of law, on the social dimension of our internal market, but also on the humane treatment of refugees in and outside the EU. There are our concerns. So that's why we will not give you a blank cheque. But as Greens, we will work with you on the Green Deal, on digitalisation, on making sure that those communications, and on the Green Deal we can expect one in 2 weeks, that we can deliver further on probably the great words that we will hear in 2 weeks. But it comes down to legislation to really change our way of life within the planetary boundaries. That's where we are going to make sure that that is the direction Europe is going to be in. And we are going to work on the actual laws that come later. And there we expect real action. One thing, for example, the climate law. Next year will be the only and last chance that we are making our ambition higher before Paris really starts. Let's use that momentum next year, and we will work with you on that.
For 1 minute, Mr. Annemans.
Voorzitter, collega's.
President, colleagues. President Juncker and President von der Leyen present an image which is rather grey and rather boring. But that dreariness must not detract from the fact that she is the signatory of a very left-wing policy. She is there in order to further federalism, which is going to lead to the end of the EU. This is very much in contrast with the wishes of many European citizens. We hope that we will be able to convince you of this and fight against this very unbalanced coalition.
This is a make or break commission. The UK is leaving or trying to. Enlargement strategy has stalled. Our European way of life is under pressure. And Turkish threats continue to bite at the heels of our border management policy. Let's face facts. Confidence and trust in the EU is fading. Reforms are needed. We all need this Commission to deliver. You will therefore need to work hard to unite this fractured union and build majorities around your agenda, especially on important issues like protecting the European way of life, ensuring effective solutions on internal security, migration management and the economy. And we must lead by example on human rights. We need to increase jobs, growth and trade. And to protect our environment while ensuring Europe can remain competitive is no small undertaking, but I hope it can be achieved. It's a great moment to have a woman president of the Commission. Suffragette Alice Paul said, "There will never be a new world order until women are part of it." My hope is that you, Madam President, and your team will show us every day that you are the woman for the job and for the change, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. For 1 minute, Mr. Gushmo.
Signora von der Leyen.
Mrs. von der Leyen, this Commission does not respond to the problems of the European Union. Everything that's bad is not changing, and everything that's not changing is getting worse. The policies pursued continue to be austerity, and The choice of the Vice President for Economics is a clear sign of this priority. We need to overcome the austerity paradigm, but cohesion policy is subject to a brutal cut, and the new Commission has already said it supports that. Now, you've been asking for extra resources for new policies, but we haven't presented them fully to us properly yet. I mean, it seems that this has been fine words producing very little at the end of the day. It's just funding to help countries carry out the structural reforms moving towards austerity that haven't been pushed through yet. Most of the members of this House prefer a 5-year institutional blockade. There's no hope, there's no change, there's nothing that manages to mobilise this House to overcome itself.
1 minute for Ms. Harris.
I would like to thank the President of the Commission for saying that she is a Remainer. Clarification is always very welcome, and can I just say it is a devastating revelation and loss to the Brexit cause. The EU has warned that it's going to take legal action against my country because we refuse to name a commissioner. But what's the point? We're leaving anyway. And two that we've already had, Kinnock and Mandelson, have used it as an opportunity to feather their nests to the tune of £10 million. They are extreme EU federalists with no intention to stand up for their people, but to merely comply and feather their nests. So we're not bothering. A decision by my country which confirms that we are indeed leaving the European Union. And remember, if we're causing you too much trouble, you can always kick us out prematurely.
Ms. Harris? Just 2 points. This may come as some surprise to you. I'm a Remainer too. And the second point is, will you accept a blue card from Mr. Smith?
No blue card.
Mr. Smith, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you, President. I'm grateful to Ms Harris for giving way. I would point out that it's a legal obligation, because the EU is a community based on justice and the rule of law, for the UK to appoint a commissioner. The UK is flagrantly in breach because we are a nihilistic, irresponsible government. And as fellow MEPs, of course, we have our own rights and privileges, but presumably you're in favour of you yourself giving up your salary and allowances for the time that you're here if you're happy for us not to have a commissioner.
Under UK law, we also can't do it during election period under PERDA, so that's one reason. And another reason is that we also have to answer to the British public. We don't answer to the EU law, and we made that very clear in 2016 when we voted to leave the European Union, sir. But thank you very much.
For 1.5 minutes, Madam Montserrat.
Thank you, President von der Leyen. I want the Commission to continue to work for a stronger, more united and safer Europe. We want it to grow and to create jobs. We want it to be united so that the rule of law can deal with nationalism and populism that threatens it. It must be a safe and secure Europe so that we protect our borders, fight terrorism and defend democracies throughout the world. At the same time, we need a more useful Europe for our citizens. We want the new Commission to be useful so that young people are afforded opportunities. Entrepreneurs, SMEs, must continue to be able to create jobs. Employment is the best social policy so that no one is left behind. We will fight for legal migration, and we must also deal with the ageing of our continent. We must care for farming, livestock production, fisheries and our rural areas. We will continue to be ambitious in the fight against climate change so that we take care of our planet. Above all, we must lead the technological and digital revolution so that we have a more competitive Europe. If we prove to be useful. Europe will grow together. We will be the Europe of the people and of equality. We need more Europe with closer management to the citizens and less bureaucracy. Only in this way can we ensure progress, equality and peace. I firmly believe that the new Commission and the College will do its best. You can count on the support of the Spanish delegation. Thank you.
For 1.5 minutes, Madam Piri.
President, Commissioner, colleagues, since the elections we have had a long and intense run to get to where we are today. And while I regret that we have failed to deliver on our promise on the Spitzenkandidaten candidates, I'm proud that all key issues that my political family campaigned for are now part of this Commission's works programme. And as S&D Group, we have not been shy with our concerns and demands, and we have achieved key results. In the field of foreign affairs, let me underline that the credibility of the EU as a global actor rests on our ability to have a successful policy at our very doorstep, but first it lies on our capacity to have our own house in order. We expect from this Commission to take a very firm stance on protecting the rule of law, both at home and abroad. And that implies a strong stance against the Putins, Erdogans, Bolsonaros, Trumps and Viktor Orbáns of this world. My group also urges this Commission to do everything in its power so that early next year green light is given to the start of accession talks with North Macedonia and Albania. Commissioners, it is time to start the really important work, to deliver results on an ambitious plan to tackle the climate crisis while ensuring a fair transition, to deliver on sustainable development goals, to give better protection to workers and to have a value-driven foreign policy. And I'm fully confident that under the leadership of our first Vice President and lead candidate Frans Timmermans, with a strong team of Social Democratic Commissioners, this Commission will stand close to citizens, is ready to listen and is determined to address their hopes and concerns. Thank you.
For 1 minute, Madam in 't Veld.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President, I'm here, in the middle, yeah. Kermit Green. I vote, but it's a vote of pragmatism and not of passion, yet. There are several positives. There are many excellent and even exceptional personalities. The highest number of women and even a woman president, a Green Deal and a focus on geopolitics. That's all good. But I also have doubts, I'll be honest. Your stubborn refusal to withdraw the controversial title of the migration portfolio shows you are more keen to placate Warsaw and Budapest than working with progressive forces in Parliament, and no, the cosmetic change does not convince me. An independent Commission is crucial for a well-functioning EU. And so far you've been the candidate mainly of the national governments. But the 200 million Europeans who voted in May this year did not vote for the old intergovernmental Europe of backroom deals, but for a modern and transparent parliamentary democracy. You need to show if you belong to the old or the new Europe. You have my vote, now you must earn my enthusiasm. Good luck.
For 1 minute, Mr. Urtasun.
Presidenta von der Leyen, a pesar...
You have some excellent people in your team, but we will not vote for you. It's inevitable. You have given one portfolio area to Viktor Orban's representative. Then there's also the protection of the European life. That also concerns us as feminists and defenders of human rights. We will pay a lot of attention to each of these portfolios. President von der Leyen, we haven't come here to be mere spectators. It doesn't make sense to just be witnesses in the European institutions. We're here to change the direction of the European project. That's why we will work on mainstreaming of external policy, and we will look at climate change so that we can deal with the social expectations of our citizens. So you can expect our group to work hard. But now it's up to you to show that there is political willingness to come up with majorities in social, environmental and feminist areas. We need that so much. Thank you.
Wilimski.
Herzlichen Dank für das...
Yes, thank you very much for giving me the floor, ladies and gentlemen. Many of you are celebrating this new commission, and I'm afraid I have a rather contradictory opinion. This is clearly rather a false start. Well, if you look at the Lisbon Treaty, it says that this commission is actually supposed to be reduced by a third. But that has been forgotten about. We've got this huge number of commissioners, and that brings with it the problem that more regulations are thought up. Things that maybe aren't very well known in my home country. They're basically trying to justify their existence. And we have to remember that there's a huge divide in Europe between those who want more centralisation and those who want to go back to national sovereignty and the nation state. No answer has been given to overcoming this divide. Maybe you could finally do without this flow of regulations. That's not what Europe needs. We need more security at the borders, generating more prosperity, not simply drowning the continent in loads and loads of regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, let me remind you of the 13 French soldiers who died in the fight against Islamic terrorism. President von der Leyen, now I will tell you that we will vote against your commission because we think you're embarking on an ideological adventure which doesn't represent the interests of Europeans and the different European nations per se. There are some sectors which are very worried because you are embarking, as I say, on an adventure. Everyone's concerned by your Green Deal. It's a chimera, a pipe dream, based on scientific, unfounded science. It will cost us huge amounts of money. It's a way to control the nations, it's a way to keep individuals in check, and it's a way to crack down on the freedom of companies. It will also require sacrifices of the nations and the sectors who will not receive any form of compensation. Thank you.
1 minute.
The new Commission has the same reactionary ingredients as the European Union. Devoted policies against the people, wants cheaper workers, social protection goes down, people become poor, go against the trade unions and extradition of refugees and migrants. The economy is not growing very rapidly, and perhaps we have a new crisis coming, and the green funds are promoted and new investments for digital technology, and the big companies win. And we have trade wars within the European Union, and also disagreement how we're going to face the USA and China, and how we're going to face Brexit, and how we're going to militarize Europe. The head of the European Commission was chosen when she was the previous Minister of War of Germany. You opened and you closed your speech, Mrs. von der Leyen, talking against communism, showing your opponent, showing weakness and fear for historic truth and the struggle for people who is going to move against the capital, the European Union and the government to cover their needs. Thank you.
1.5 minutes, Mr. Tajani.
Madam von der Leyen, we will be voting in your commission because we share what you have said about the importance of the individual, our responsibility, the role of industry, digitalization, our fight against cancer, research, relations with the US. We share your political vision, not the bureaucratic vision of the Commission. But we want all of this to be borne out by practical facts, including the budget. Of course, we want to fight climate change, but we must be careful that industry is not penalized, nor indeed our agriculture. Firms are essential if we're to create new jobs. That's why we need a proper competition policy which is in keeping with the times and which will enable our companies to compete at national and at global level. We need to protect them from unfair competition, be careful about the Silk Route and the Chinese policy, which might lead to dumping, including environmental dumping, not just social dumping and commercial dumping. And this might put into jeopardy or compromise our production system. To go on to agriculture, we can't allow for cuts in agriculture. Agriculture is a fundamental instrument if we're to protect our environment and to protect employment in the EU. Now, as far as migration is concerned, let's be careful about Africa. We need to invest more in a proper Marshall Plan so that we can reduce migratory flows towards Europe. And then one last word regarding the rule of law. We cannot forget what happened to Daphne Caruana Galizia. We have to continue to talk about this until we find out who the perpetrators of this crime are. And we're very close to the truth now. Thank you.
For 1.5 minutes, Madam Fritzon.
Fru President.
Madam President, today is an important day in this Parliament. We will be approving a commission for the next 5 years. And I think it's a great objective that Europe will be the first carbon-neutral continent. The Green Deal is so important. It's important so that we together will take our responsibility and leave our children a sustainable Europe and a more sustainable world to our children and our grandchildren. Nobody should be left behind. We need a just transition, and we also need to ensure that there are more jobs in Europe and with good conditions, not least for Europe's young people, a third of whom lack a job. Social rights need to be strengthened in the member states, and work must continue with the social pillar, which all member states stand behind. But at the same time, we also need to rapidly find a migration policy that shows solidarity and responsibility, and do that together. So I'm glad that we have Ylva Johansson. She is the woman to do that. I'd also like to welcome the Commission's initiative to have an equality union and an equality strategy. We need a Commission that stands up for our fundamental democratic rights. We have a focus on improving people's lives and delivering. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Woutmans, 1 minute.
Thank you, President. President of the Commission, I will be voting later on issues which are very important. We've never had such an ambitious plan with regard to climate, with regard to migration, innovation, digitalization, and our economy. Mr. Borrell is going to be fighting for the place of Europe in the world, and I'll be counting on you with regard to the conference on the future of Europe that you will support this, where many issues can be discussed without any limits on how the future of Europe should be shaped. I think that this could be a very important signal to be conveyed to the citizens. It's a conference as to how Europe is going to work for our citizens in the future. Now, you would not be surprised that I am expecting you to really take the reins in hand, and that you steer Europe in the right direction, that you will give Europe the strength it needs. I think that this is what I expect from you and your colleagues, commissioners. And if you do not do that, we will definitely point that out to you. But please go ahead and drive forward. Thank you.
Mr. David.
Ladies and gentlemen, when looking at the European Commission, I have my doubts as to whether it's going to act in line with the interest of the citizens, whether those EU citizens are interested in losing their identity and following orders from faraway centre. Looking at the moving care of the environment, suddenly it doesn't matter if forests are burnt in Brazil or beef is transported across the world in line with Mercosur agreement. The greatest problem I see is in the future agenda of Věra Jourová, the Commissioner. It should concern the European values such as democracy, freedom, equality, non-discrimination, tolerance. How does that come in line with huge differences in the levels of subsidies for agriculture and isolations of not assenting MEPs? These noble excuses show how the vision of a well-known novel by George Orwell is becoming reality.
1 minute.
Dear Mrs von der Leyen, there are many things I disagree with you on the creeping federalisation of the European Union towards a superstate. And I'm really disappointed that after 40 years' membership of the European Union, we failed to persuade you that Europe's success depends on protecting the sovereignty of our member states. But we are shortly to leave, and I wanted to let you know that despite our differences, Europe has no greater friend than the UK. We recognise your priorities of climate change, economic competitiveness, migration, security and the rule of law, and you'll find no greater ally than the UK to achieve our mutual goals in those areas. The coming months will present many challenges as we seek to redefine our relationship. I hope that the EU will remember that a strong and free-trading UK has always been in the best interests of Europeans as it is of British citizens. And speaking personally, in the short time I've been an MEP, I've really enjoyed the company, the passion and the arguments with my fellow MEP colleagues. I look forward to working with you and them as we look for a better future for all our citizens.
For 1.5 minutes, Mr. Rangel.
Thank you, Chair. Senhora Presidente.
Madam President-elect, first of all, I'd like to compliment you on the speech that you've made, for your programme and for your team. I'd also like to compliment you on your capacity to inspire people, to so many people across Europe, but particularly to us in this House. Unlike my Dutch colleague, you can count upon not only upon my vote but also my enthusiasm. We cannot accept a budget which is lower than the previous budget. We particularly need to look at the cohesion policies because there is a threat to cohesion, and without cohesion there can be no European Union. There's a risk. We have something important to do, the Just Transition Fund, but 5 billion euros could go from cohesion into this fund. New priorities need new financing. Cohesion policy should not be affected. And finally, on the conference on the future of Europe, we need to be fully committed to this plan. We need to get our citizens on board. The Commission should not do what some colleagues in this room have done today, and to basically have their conclusions in place before we listen to the citizens and involve them in the conference. That's a fundamental step for this Commission and all of the institutions, that we must have a successful conference on the future of Europe. Thank you.
For 1.5 minutes, Mr. Moraes.
Thank you, President. The British general election does not preclude us sending a commissioner to the Commission. It is a legal obligation, and it is a matter of regret, because sincere cooperation means that. That is why we are here, and that is the spirit in which we should have continued. So you are not legally complete, and that is a fact. This Commission was part of a process in its building, and that is why I'm proud of the progressive commissioners and what they can achieve, but it was part of a process. Building a Green New Deal, a just transition to a low-carbon economy, workers' rights, equality, the Horizontal Discrimination Directive. Many of these have been characterised by delay, but delay because they were challenges that had to be overcome. So the process in building you was part of our group's wish to create a more progressive Commission. And so we vote, but I want to mention two things which I've spent my last 20 years on, which the President-designate of the Commission mentioned. One was the 39 people in the lorry, the thousands of people who have lost their lives in the Mediterranean. There will be a pact on migration within days of this Commission taking office. This is a challenge because we have not got it right. And this is an extraordinary challenge for this new Commission because it is fueling the bad politics of the European Union. So I wish you all the very best with this, but it must be in line with our fundamental EU values of human rights and dignity. And for the challenges of the future, the President-designate mentioned AI and having responsible data in the future. We don't want China. The United States still doesn't have GDPR, so it is for the European Union. But dealing responsibly with data innovation, that is for the European Union. Extraordinary challenges, and I'm proud to have been part of this European Union which can deal with that.
Mr. Goerens for 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. There's no doubt the members of the future Commission are high-quality people. I'm thinking about the Commissioner from my political family, Nicola Schmidt, whose skills are not in question, but there are many others like him. Nevertheless, I have to think of Sylvie Goulard, who was a good candidate, but I think she was mistreated during her parliamentary hearing. Of course, a parliamentary hearing is not fun and games. In these circumstances, you want critical questions. In fact, you need them. Having said that, though, nothing justified the hostile attitude of the European Parliament vis-à-vis Ms. Goulard. This led to the announcement of, we will kill her. This isn't really compatible with parliamentary conduct. When a decision of this nature is made without respect and objectivity, we blocked the route of someone who is exceptionally talented. I cannot tolerate the way that that decision was made by some of my colleagues.
Madison for 1 minute.
Es ist leider unmöglich, diese Warum? Der so wahlstechenden Kommission fällt.
And the reason for that is that the head of this, Mrs. von der Leyen, has not been on a voting list, and if we had used the lead candidate situation, that could perhaps have been justified, but she was not the lead candidate. I think there were problems in the defence ministry, and we saw that from Germany. And what is said with this new commissioner at its helm, there seems to be a very negative future. Unfortunately, she does not have a realistic view for the future, and the focus that she's putting on at the moment is on the, but it's not a magic community. It is a voluntary union of independent countries.
Is a blue card request from Mr. Karas. Will you accept? Oh, I beg your pardon. Mr. Karas was not asking a blue card. It was for catch the eye. You're okay this time. Just to say that the catch the eye procedure was closed some time ago because we have a large list. Our next speaker for 1.5 minutes is Madam Šojdrová.
Thank you for giving me the floor, Madam Chair. Unlike the previous speaker, I think that this Commission merits support and trust, and I thank Madam Chair that she mentioned the Velvet Revolution and Václav Havel. the new Commission, after today's approval, will be able to fully take up its role, and we can start working on the tasks ahead of us. I will speak as a coordinator for my group, for the Cult Committee. I really appreciate that Madam President-elect supplemented the name of the portfolio of Mrs. Gabriel like culture, education and research. And I believe that Commission will also support sport as a very important tool for social inclusion and health. And because this word is not in the portfolio, please support an intergroup for sport so that we can have a cross-group support in support of sport as part of the work of the European Parliament. And I'd like to encourage the European Commission to support tripling the budget for Erasmus. It is a program with a high added value. It's been helping both teachers and students to improve their skills, their experience, and it has a great European added value as a whole to supplement their European experiences. It also enables inclusion, but it will only get better if we boost the budget. So it is very important. And I expect also to initiate a Solidarity Corps program, which is very important for the young generation. Thank you.
1 minute, Mr. Kubelas.
Well, Madam Chair, Madam President, first of all, I would like to congratulate you for what you have did till now and what are you going to do. As a Lithuanian, as a human being with some political experience, I simply trust you. I will not try to give you any more political advice. You got a lot of them. You know very well what you will need to accomplish. This will be a huge task. Perhaps during the next 5 years, there will be more challenging days if you compare with this day. I would like to wish you simply not to lose your personal motivation, your energy, your leadership skills, even in the most difficult circumstances. From my own experience being Prime Minister during the crisis, I know how difficult it can be. And I simply share the hope that this House will be a constructive partner to you personally and to your Commission, despite our political differences. Let's go back to a serious job. Let's leave simple and primitive political fights behind ourselves. Good luck.
Thank you. I now move to Catch the Eye, and I will be very strict on the 1 minute in order to facilitate as many speakers as possible. Madam Spiraki, for 1 minute, please.
Ευχαριστώ, κυρία Πρόεδρε. Κυρία von der Leyen, Πρόεδρε της νέας...
Madam von der Leyen, President of the new Commission, we support you. And we place our trust in you, your trust in the new Green Deal, which can be a turning point for the European Union. We just need to, we agree that we need to provide the funding for that. There needs to be participation of the private sector. We need to support innovation through every channel possible. This will lead to a Europe which will be at the forefront and the first continent to be carbon neutral by 2050. A lot of people still depend on coal in Western Macedonia. There are people who are waiting to be reassured in relation to their future. We need to use the Just Transition Fund to make sure this transition is priority.
Hvala lepa, gospa predsedujoča. Spoštovane in spoštovani, podprl bom.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall support the Commission team, and that despite the fact that I am not fully in agreement with all the nominations. I would also like to express my regret about the fact that we have missed 1 month of work for the European Union and 1 month for Slovenia. So I regret that very much because we have no time to lose. We need to act collectively and we need to rise to the challenges which face us. The social, economic and digital transition which we have to deliver, are very, very important. We have to do this on the basis of a just transition, which promotes integration in society and benefits all individuals and promotes human rights. We need a sustainable economic strategy, we need technical innovation, and we need investment in green infrastructure. We also need to look at the enlargement towards the Balkans and a proper, coherent, multilateral strategy in compliance with international law.
Your declaration that you are a Remainer, I am too, and so are tens of millions of Britons who will warmly welcome your words. Now we've completed a thorough process of democratic scrutiny, I welcome the opportunity to vote for the Commission today and see it get down to work on the huge issues that face our continent: climate change, trade wars, exploitation, injustice and discrimination. But can I say that I too am embarrassed and saddened that the United Kingdom has broken EU rules and so far failed to nominate a commissioner, while 27 other countries compete for portfolios and put their brightest and best forward to serve all of Europe. Our government has chosen to leave its seat at the table empty. This must be one of the first examples in world history of a nation working hard for less influence, shouting for a smaller voice, lobbying to be silent. I very much hope that a new British government will show much more sense.
Horwood. Madam Tomatic, for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The novelty brought about by the new European Commission lies not only in fresh faces and more women, but there has also been an organisational reshuffle. The new portfolios and their titles are very confusing, and I'm sure they will not improve efficiency. The former technocratic setup for the Commission had its faults, but still was fit for purpose. Now it has been replaced by a new structure based on ideology. Although there are commissions from various groups, this commission looks less like the executioner of what was agreed by the member states and more like a structure with its own political agenda. Madam von der Leyen, I voted for you because of pragmatism, and I hope that you will surprise me pleasantly very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferreira.
Senhora Presidente.
Madam President, your political programme, your composition, this is a commission chosen by those who rule Europe to defend their interests. The major powers can defend their instruments of power, the single market, the euro, all done on the back of those countries who are facing the largest difficulties. There's promiscuity between economic and political power. Large capital power, large economic and financial groups have direct access to the Berlaymont. This is a commission which is subverting cohesion policy, linking it to so-called structural reforms, which will serve for nothing more than destroying public services and creating further precarity in life. This is a commission which is linked to the far right receiving the distribution of the portfolios. This is a commission which shows that the grand coalition between the right and the S&Ds and now the Greens want to join in, and this shows once again.
Please, your time is up. Mr. Kelly, 1 minute.
President Ursula, both personally and politically, I'm delighted to support you, and indeed the College, and I look forward to working with you over the next 4 years, especially my colleague from Ireland, Commissioner Hogan. I saw how you tried to build support for your candidacy, and especially how you bent over backwards to get the support of the Greens, who make up less than 10% of the Parliament, promising them a new Green Deal. Given that I failed to support you, that I may not support the College of Commissioners today, and may not be happy with whatever you come forward with in the new Green Deal, saying that isn't ambitious enough, would you consider, and Mr Timmermans, changing the title to what it actually is, or will be, an enhanced climate change strategy for Europe? Because all sides of the House here are committed to combating climate change. No one group has ownership of it, and I think by calling it an enhanced climate change strategy, that would be sensible.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Marquez.
Thank you, President of the Commission. We need to get down to work. You will have the support of this political group because you made our proposals your own and you have some of our best in your team. But a good programme or a good speech will be nothing more than nice words if they're not implemented and there aren't sufficient funds. We need to focus on the future of Europe. CO2 emissions will not wait while we procrastinate. If we look at the fires and floods around Europe, China and the United States are enjoying our hesitation when it comes to leading the digital revolution. The poorest and those who die in the Mediterranean can't deal with the indifference. Therefore, it's time to act, and you will have the support of this Parliament for initiatives, and we will count on you to establish bridges within the Commission and Council. Thank you.
For 1 minute.
Gracias. El Partido Nacional.
Thank you. The Basque Nationalist Party supports the European Commission, being the most gender-balanced one we've ever seen. This is an excellent example. Our community has to be based on values. We need a strong industrial policy, a strong, productive economy going forward on the basis of the circular economy. We need integrated and sustainable mobility, and we need to work for a green strategy so that we focus on the productive economy rather than the financial economy. We need protection for workers, decent life and decent working and living standards for individuals. We need this to be on an equal basis across all the regions of the European Union. We also need to ensure that we have proper instruments in place to monitor compliance with the rule of law. This is one of the fundaments of democracy. We need more democracy, politics in capital letters. We need a humane approach, and we need to ensure that we work together across the board.
1 minute.
Thank you very much, President. Mrs. von der Leyen, I will be voting against the Commission and its new programme because I think that the objectives that you have set will not be able to be achieved with the budget, which is only 1% of European GNI. And so for that reason, I do not agree with the way that the budgets have been allocated to cohesion, to the common agricultural policy, to social expenditure. And I also think that Europe has been paralysed and has not been able to find a solution to the refugee question. And I think that we need to be more ambitious to fight against climate change and also to fight against corruption and the lack of transparency, and that is the reason why the GUI NGL will be voting against the new Commission and will play an active role in opposition in the 5 years to come. Thank you.
Spoštovana gospa predsednica, spoštovani komisarji, iskrene čestitke za
Commissioners, I'd like to congratulate you on an excellent presentation of an excellent programme. I am delighted to see that there is a virtually gender-balanced Commission. I think that this is a very good basis for effective and efficient cooperation. You've also identified the right priorities for us: health, climate change, sustainable development. These are all extremely important, and these are objectives which have got to be supported by an effective budget. That's the only way in which we can actually achieve the goals that we have set ourselves. I'm particularly pleased to hear that you have focused on people as individuals at the very heart of your policies. We all have the same needs and the same concerns: peace and cooperation are the values which underpin Europe, which have made Europe great.
Dziękuję bardzo, Pani Przewodnicząca.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. The European Commission last year decided to present drafts of 2 directives, the objective of which was to introduce tax on income from certain digital services. And also you, Madam von der Leyen, mentioned one thing, namely just digital tax. What I would like to do is to express my full support for such measures. I wish you all success in implementing them. I think they are absolutely key. Unfortunately, I know that the work currently in the pipeline in the Council shows that digital tax is very difficult to introduce. There are many enemies of this idea and there is so much resistance. But even more so, Madam President, I wish you resistance on your part, and I hope that you remain consistent and that you will not withdraw.
Spoštovana gospa von der Leyen, spoštovana ekipa, imate mojo podporo, čestitke za kompetentno.
I would like to support you. I would like to congratulate you on the balanced, competent team. I think you've identified the problems that we have to tackle: climate change, digitalization, health, democratic issues and demographics. And I think that you've said that you want to solve the problems in such a way that you'll be opening up new opportunities. And I think that will be a guarantee for Europe remaining the most attractive continent, where we have a very high standard of living and where people like to live here. I'm very pleased that you are supporting the enlargement to the Western Balkans. It is important that we encourage democracy in these countries and at the same time help them to catch up with lags in development and climate issues as well, smart cities. Thank you.
Grupo. Ay, perdón. Grappini? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. President designate, I would like to say from the very beginning that I voted for you. I listened carefully what you said today. You have to give a lot of answers to many questions. I would have liked you to stress the United Europe. There are still 3 member states that are not in the Schengen area. I would have liked you to give answers to what happens to negative aspects. We should not hide things under the carpet. There are stolen children, violence against women, interference within the elections. This has dropped the trust that we had in you. You should win again trust. The vote of today is a vote of conjuncture and access to gaining trust.
This debate is now closed. Thank you for your cooperation on the Catch the Eye. Thank you to Commissioner President-designate von der Leyen. We will have a brief suspension until 12 noon. Thank you.
Rieccoci. Prendiamo posto.
Colleagues, could you take your seats, please, so that we can proceed?
Prendiamo posto.
Colleagues, could you please take your seats?
Innanzitutto vorrei dare il...
First of all, it is my pleasure to welcome some visitors.
Direi di iniziare, colleghi.
Colleagues, please could we begin?
Colleghe e colleghi, innanzitutto...
Colleagues, first of all, it is my pleasure to welcome some guests to the gallery. We have delegates from the Japanese Diet, the House of Representatives and House of Councillors to the EU-Japan Interparliamentary Meeting. You're very warmly welcome. They are with us for a short time for the EU-Japan Interparliamentary Meeting. The delegation is led by Mr. Onodera, MP, House of Representatives. And it is a great pleasure and indeed an honour to have our Japanese friends here with us in Strasbourg. It's also a pleasure for me to welcome 80 students who are here together with their teachers, who are here to present the declaration that they have written on rights and the planet. So you two are very warmly welcome here today.
Le ringraziamo.
We are very grateful for the work that you've done. We're delighted to have this opportunity to welcome you here in the European Parliament.
E adesso iniziamo.
So now we shall move on to our voting. And the first item on which we have to vote is the election of the Commission. Yes?
Président, chers collègues, il y a 2 jours.
2 days ago, 13 French armed forces lost their lives in a fight against terrorism, and it has not yet been possible for this Parliament to honour their deaths with a minute's silence. And so I would like to suggest that we have a minute's silence and that everyone respect this loss of life in Mali.
Un momento.
Just one moment, please, colleagues. Mr. Jadot, perhaps you weren't here yesterday, because yesterday we did indeed commemorate the lives of the soldiers who lost their lives in Mali. Perhaps you were not here at that precise moment, but we have indeed already paid tribute to the soldiers who lost their lives in Mali. Having said that, no, I don't intend to give you the floor further. But having said that, since everybody in the European Parliament, all the members, I'm sure, would agree with me, I shall indeed invite you to observe a minute's silence now.
Iniziamo.
Thank you, colleagues. We now move on to the election of the Commission, which is the first vote. The vote will be preceded by one round of political group speakers in reverse order. Therefore, I call Ms. Fox for 2 minutes.
My fellow MEPs, let's be honest with our voters at home. This process is a sham. Colleagues, we are being used as a stage army marched out today to rubber stamp a thoroughly anti-democratic imposition of a top-down power at Commission level. This Parliament is no more than a faux democratic charade used to give a veneer of legitimacy to an illegitimate decision-making process. We may salve our consciences by rejecting a few bad eggs at bogus committee hearings, but the truth is, all we can do is accept or reject from a bunch of pre-selected candidates with no real choice. You can heckle as much as you want, but I'm finishing. This hypocrisy is summed up for me by that gigantic poster of Ursula von der Leyen outside the Parliament in Brussels. It is frankly distasteful Orwellian propaganda. It reads, "In fair and free elections, the power of the people determines the people in power." That is true in national democracies, but it's a flagrant lie, fake news and disinformation in relation to the Commission. Ms von der Leyen herself was not elevated to a position of power due to people power. The only power on display in her election was a behind-the-scenes cabal who pushed her forward as a last-minute compromise candidate. And although she only scraped through, she now has the power to dictate the priorities of Europe. She has the power to impose her agenda on millions of European citizens, whether they like it or not. From the Commission's ambition for a Green New Deal, for deeper monetary integration or austerity, or appointing Joseph Borrell, who endorses qualified majority voting on foreign policy that strips nation states of the right to determine their own foreign policy, this federalism steals power from the people and is a naked power grab from the demos to technocrats in the Commission, and we're expected to nod it through. In the UK, we're mid-January.
Thank you.
Voters will directly vote on who they will loan their authority to. Yet that national popular sovereignty...
Onorevole Fox.
Thank you, Ms Fox. Thank you very much.
...means that voters are masters and politicians are the public servants.
Thank you, Ms Fox. Thank you, Ms Fox. The next speaker is Ms Aubry, who has 2 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you very much, President. Colleagues, today's vote is not a vote like any other. It's a major vote, perhaps the most important vote of the century, to face the two challenges, the climate challenge and the crisis of inequality. Two stakes that cannot be met with just vague statements. And so that is why, coming out of the hearings, we have to say that we have the same conclusions. 3 commissioners were rejected for conflict of interest, and there are serious doubts about the independence of some of the others. Now, of course, there are fine promises being made, and we welcome them. The commitment, the right of initiative of parliamentarians, or also an insulation plan for buildings. And on all of these subjects, we will be vigilant allies. But over and above that progress, you remain stuck in dogma, faced with the current crises. How can you say that you're going to have a Green Deal, but you're going to have climate trade policies which go against that? And what about tax havens? And how can we have a humanist policy if we're rejecting people arriving on our shores? And you continue to pursue you can't play on both sides. There are significant threats at the moment, and we're past the alert stage. Both citizens and the planet deserve more. An ambitious Green New Deal which would create thousands of jobs, changing our agricultural profit, our methods of consumption and our means of transport. We need tax justice, ending impunity for multinationals who are not paying their taxes, and also we should have rescue at sea and not closing our eyes to what's happening in the Mediterranean. And we deserve good public services and social protections to help all of those living in poverty. And we have to it's not just a renewed package that we need, but total change. The GUI NGL group think that the planet and citizens deserve better.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lugo. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Your Commission is a chance for a new beginning, and we hope there will be a new beginning. And my group will support you in many things. We will definitely support you in finding a compromise on the budgets. We will support you in the opening up of the single market in services, in finding a lasting solution of migration, in implementing ambitious climate plans. But let me emphasise, we will give full support to the communities whose livelihoods are threatened by the absurd ramping up of climate ambitions. Please keep in mind that there is not, and there never will be, an EU nation. The EU is made up of 26 or 28, if you will, sovereign countries, and no two countries are the same. Do not try to take away power from member states by removing the rights of veto. Remember that the institution that sets the EU's agenda is the European Council, not the European Parliament. Please do not continue the previous Commission's practice of violating the letter and the spirit of the treaties to enforce the process of integration. Despite what you hear in this chamber or in meeting rooms in Brussels, there is a completely different view of what the EU is or what the EU should and shouldn't be in communities across our member states. So please let this be about evidence-based policy, not policy-based evidence. Mrs. von der Leyen, good luck.
Grazie, onorevole Zanni.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Zanni, who likewise has 2 minutes. Thank you very much indeed, President. President von der Leyen, finally, after months of disagreements across the majorities, we have a Commission. This is at a time when the European Union's institutions are facing a crisis, and I regret to have to say that this Commission is already lame and one of the weakest ones we've ever seen. Your high-sounding words are unlikely to be translated into a Commission that is effective. It seems to be blind to the messages that the European citizens have sought to convey, and it seems to be blind to the problems of our citizens and the way that they think they should be resolved. You talked about gender balance. During your speech, you spoke about a Green New Deal. But unfortunately, the citizens think differently. When they wake up in the morning, they don't think about the European Commission's gender balance, and they don't think about the Green New Deal. They think, how are they going to make ends meet by the end of the month? How are they going to find a job? How are they going to keep a job, feed their family? And the Green New Deal is all very fine and well, high-sounding ideological words which might deliver competitive advantage to industry. Europe's already done a lot about cutting emissions. There are others in other places of the globe who ought to be putting their own house in order, and we don't want your suggestions simply to turn into a further burden for our industry and our economy and our citizens. I actually didn't hear you talk about some of the things which are very important. For example, the threats to our competitiveness which derive from elsewhere in the globe. Nor did I hear you addressing the way in which we might correct the malfunctioning of our internal market. I didn't hear you talking about wage injustices or fiscal dumping or the deindustrialization which is taking place within the European Union as a direct result of distortions of the internal market. Therefore, this group is going to say no to those who don't have the vision to deliver for Europe and who, by failing to make progress, are going to condemn Europe to make no progress and to retrograde steps. We need a big change of gear. That's what the citizens in Europe are asking for. And unfortunately, Europe will have no future unless we achieve that. Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Keller is the next speaker, 2 minutes.
Dear colleagues, the new Commission takes office at a time when the climate emergency doesn't leave us much time to act. And we're happy to see that climate and environmental issues are a key priority for the new Commission and, by the way, also a key priority for more than 90% of the European population. However, we're not so sure that the headlines will be followed by concrete action, because if the Commission, as it has announced, does not change its agricultural and trade policy, then any climate measure will remain half-hearted. We're also happy to see that more women than ever are part of the European Commission, even though it's curious to see that some governments absolutely couldn't find any women in their country. So more work needs to be done to ensure a gender balance and also an overall better representation of the European society in the Commission. We have found in the hearing some very good candidates, but also some that made us doubt in conflict of interest on how serious you are on European values, on rule of law, on women's rights. Madam President, we can and we will not support a Commission that is not clear on those issues. But be sure that whenever you take an initiative that protects the climate, that strengthens a social Europe and that enhances the rule of law, we are more than ready to support you. But we will also point out when we think that the Commission is taking a wrong turn or is being too timid. Europe needs decisive action now, and we hope that you will feel the courage and the strength to push for change, to stand up against the Council as well when needed, and to base your work on European values such as human rights for all and on rule of law. We want you to act because it's high time, and that's why we don't give you a red card, even though we have pointed out all of those problems I've mentioned today various times, and we haven't seen them addressed. But we also don't want to give you a blank cheque either, and that's why our group has decided to abstain today as a head start in terms of trust that we will hope will be justified. We're looking forward to a good cooperation with you, and we wish you and your college all the strength, all the courage and energy that it takes not just to hold our continent together, but to bring it forward. Thank you.
Presidente Cholos.
Mr. Cholos, 2 minutes for you.
Madam President, there are many things that the Commission will have to tackle with determination and to deliver for Member States and citizens to show that they should have confidence in this plan. We have to recognise that never has the Commission had such a high level of ambition for the climate and the digital sector, with promises that do seem promising indeed. And we have never seen equal opportunities at this level, because equal representation means the equal opportunity to all to express themselves, and the rule of law and individual freedoms need to be protected. We have never had a dialogue of this type so that we could build a political agenda. And the S&D group has been able to put its print on that plan, and we will support you, but it will not be a blank cheque. And we hope that everything that you have said about the environment, about equality, will mean, and those who have spoken should respect what they have said. And we need to build a clear and honest partnership here in the Parliament based on confidence, because without mutual trust we will not be able to achieve results. And we will be very vigilant with regard to the proposals which have been made. Each Commissioner has a key role to make people love Europe again. And from the east to the west, from north to the south, we have a clear challenge, which is to breathe new life into the European project. And this is not something we can do just by making wonderful promises and with fine words. What we need to do is make Europe very specific and a part of the everyday life of our citizens. And that is why we'll be voting for you.
Thank you very much. Ms. García Pérez, 2 minutes.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you. In May of this year, the European citizen gave us a very clear message. They want Europe. They want a different Europe. They want a Europe that has changed, a Europe that is a space of opportunities once again. The Socialist Group has a very clear idea about what we need to do over the coming 5 years. We're going to work towards a greener Europe, a more feminine Europe, a more social Europe. We hope the Commission will act with responsibility. We hope they will be courageous. You may make mistakes, but we will never allow you to resign yourself, to not try and address the challenges that Europe needs to address. Therefore, we will be vigilant, we will be committed, we will cooperate, and we will check, but we can be clear that we have 5 years of hard work in front of us. We need to give people hope. Those citizens who stand outside this Parliament, the women and men of Europe, are waiting for this hope from us.
Presidente Weber.
Thank you very much. Mr. Weber, 2 minutes for you too.
Herr Präsident, wir leben in einer Zeit, wo
President, we are living in a time where extremist policies are popular, especially in the media, and therefore the presentation from Ms von der Leyen is very welcome today because it strikes a middle way and it shows us how we can work for the best interests of the continent. It shows us how to be committed, how to tackle the challenges that are ahead, and how to work on the basis of a democratic mandate to deliver for our people. The commissioners come to us from their member states via the Council, but they come to be a commission. They work with the Parliament. They're a collegiate body, and we work together. We work together on a basis of partnership so that we can work for the best interests of the united Europe that we serve. And that is our objective. And when I hear the sounds and comments coming from the left and the remarks from the right, starting to agitate against the new Commission already, starting to attack them and starting to shirk responsibility, then I say to you the best thing we can do today is give a resounding yes to the Commission.
Let's deliver a strong and united European Union. Thank you so much.
Grazie. Passiamo ora alle votazioni.
Thank you very much, colleagues. We shall now move on to the vote. May I inform you that explanations of vote will be taken tomorrow, not today. They may also be submitted in writing. This is an exceptional arrangement. Under Article 1, Rule 125, the Parliament either elects or rejects the Commission on the basis of a simple majority of votes cast, an electronic vote, a roll call vote. I shall announce the results thereafter. If the Commission receives a majority support, I shall sign the letter, which will then represent the view of the Parliament, and I shall send it to the President of the Commission and notify the Council of today's proceedings. This is the basis on which the European Council will then proceed to nominate the Commission officially. The election of the Commission will take place, as I said, by a roll call vote, and the vote is now open.
Hanno votato tutti?
Has everybody voted? The vote is now closed.
Approvato.
461 in favour, 157 against, 89 abstentions. Before I proceed to sign the document, President of the Commission, would you like to take your seat? Before I proceed to sign the official nomination documents, I'd like to say to the Parliament and to the Council that we are very proud of all the work that the European Parliament has done in this procedure. It's been a democratic procedure, serious-minded, democratic in compliance with the treaties and the rules of the Parliament. I should therefore like to extend my thanks to all the parliamentary committees, to their chairman and to all members, to the political groups as well. And I'd like to underline how much work has been done by the administration of the Parliament in order to facilitate this procedure. So my thanks are also due to them. I'd like also to thank the press and all the communication officers who've worked long and hard. And I'd like to say to Ms von der Leyen, as she takes the presidency of the Commission, that we wish you all the very best in your future work. And I shall now sign the nomination letter. And I need to come now down to pass it over to you.
Proseguiamo con il nostro ordine.
We should continue with our agenda, colleagues. We have now some other votes which are also important. First of all, Eva Kaili's report on the mobilisation of the European Union Solidarity Fund to provide assistance to Greece. This is a single vote. Again, a roll call vote. The vote is open.
La votazione è chiusa.
The vote is closed.
Approvato.
That's approved. A majority of the members. 3/4 of the votes cast. The next item is the Hohlmeier report, which is on the mobilisation of the flexibility instrument. Again, a roll call vote. The vote is open.
La votazione è chiusa.
The vote is closed.
Approvato.
That's approved. The Hohlmeier report on the mobilisation of the EU Solidarity Fund to provide for payment of advances. The vote is open.
Chiusa.
The vote is closed.
Approvato.
That is adopted. The Hohlmeier report and the Gardiazabal report 2020 budgetary procedure, the joint text. A roll call vote on this. The vote is open.
La votazione.
The vote is closed.
Approvato.
That's approved.
Vuole intervenire? Sì. Il Consiglio vuole intervenire?
The Council would like to take the floor, I believe.
Mr. President, honourable members, ladies and gentlemen, I congratulate you for concluding your vote on the budget of the European Union for the financial year 2020. The Council notes with satisfaction that the European Parliament conferred the agreement reached at the Conciliation Committee meeting on 18 November with so wide political support from here. I take this opportunity to thank once again the Chair of the Committee on Budget, Johan van Overtveld, and the rapporteurs, Monica Hohlmeier and Eider Gardiazabal, as well as all other members of the European Parliament who participated in the budgetary procedure for your constructive approach. I would also like to thank Commissioner for his support to this work. Thank you so much.
Il progetto comune su cui
The Conciliation Committee reached an agreement on the 18th of November. This has been approved by the Parliament and the Council. The budgetary procedure has been carried out in accordance with Article 314 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union and the other provisions on the budget for 2020. Therefore, the budgetary procedure can now be deemed concluded, in that the budget has now officially been definitively adopted for 2020. I shall now proceed to sign the said budget.
Care colleghe e cari colleghi,
Colleagues, we shall have a suspension for a few minutes.
Grazie per la collaborazione.
Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for